Hey guys, we're back. This video is kind of continuing on our Cold War discussion. This one is for the HL kiddos, but it's for so if I gotta scroll all the way up here. Like right here, right? Truman, containment and its implications for the Americas, the rise of McCarthyism, yada, yada, yada. The next episode I do will be focusing on domestic stuff in the United States with McCarthyism. But for this one, we're going to focus on Latin America and the implications of the policy of containment on the Americas, right? So, it's going to be a relatively short video because there's not a whole heck of a lot to talk about here. So, just a little background on containment, where it came from, how it developed, right? So, in 46, Kennan releases the long telegram. Again, word association, long telegram, just think of dangerous and expansionist, right? Kennan is giving his view on Soviet politics, on how the Soviet Union is going to conduct itself. The long telegram, the way that it was the way that it was actually meant, and the way that it was perceived are two kind of completely different things. If you ever read parts of the long telegram, one of the things that Kennan says is that the Soviet Union is misunderstood and America needs to learn more about it. But we didn't interpret it that way. We interpreted it as dangerous and expansionist. In March, that's going to be a huge part of where Truman develops his foreign policy from, right? So he's coming off of the Potsdam conference that didn't go great. He doesn't have a lot of foreign policy experience, and Kennan is going to be one of those guys that helps him shape how he perceives the Soviet Union, especially after Potsdam. In March of 1947, because of events in Greece and Turkey, Harry Truman is going to give a speech. That speech is known as the Truman Doctrine, where he suggests that the United States will help any country, both financially and militarily, in terms of stopping the spread of communism. That idea becomes known as containment. So that's where containment comes from, as a little bit of a refresher. Later, the idea of containment and the issuing of the Truman Doctrine is what is going to allow Marshall aid to be a thing. Right. This is a massive, massive, massive loan package from America to European countries to help them rebuild after World War II. America makes the connection that poor countries turn communist. So if you don't have poor countries, you won't have communism. Right, so we extend that aid program to these European states. It's a huge transfer of wealth because taxpayer dollars are now sending their money to Europe for Europe to pay for their rebuilding by investing in the private sector of American corporations. Right, huge transfer of wealth with the Marshall Plan. We'll pick back up with the Marshall Plan, I'm sure, at another point in this series. But this is where that claim of dollar imperialism, right? The Marshall Plan is neo-imperialism from a U.S. Standpoint, right? I don't need to send troops to Western Europe to get them to do what I need them to do. All I have to make them is reliant on my currency, and that's exactly what the Marshall Plan is going to do. But this isn't about the Marshall Plan, so we'll get into that more later. Walter Lippmann, who was a journalist at the time, is going to say that this ideological campaign has no limits. He feared the containment would engage the United States in reacting, subsiding, and supporting an array of satellites, clients, dependents, and puppets that would result in perpetual Cold War. Right. I realize that I missed some commas there, but I use voice to text just to get this out as quickly as possible. So I apologize, but you can definitely make some edits to that if you plan on using that aspect of historiography. Now on to Latin America, right? So after the Truman Doctrine speech, Truman is going to go back to Latin America, right? We already have a network of diplomacy with Latin America during World War II after the Good Neighbor policy with FDR. So Truman is going to reach back out to that network, and he is going to have the Rio Conference, and the Rio Conference is going to be kind of a declaration of if a communist country attacks an attack on one American state is attack on all American states. And this was a huge, huge, huge win for Truman in terms of protecting versus a communist threat. But he did not understand the assignment, right? There's clearly no way that communism is going to spread to the Western Hemisphere at this point in time. And we had just made the connection in Europe that poor countries turn communist. So if we take away poor countries, we take away communism, not really realizing the economic situation in Latin America. Uh, um, so there's no talk of economic aid to Latin America and no talk of matching Marshall aid in Latin American states. The Organization of American States is created in 1948. This is a way to provide kind of military strategy in terms of protecting against the communist threat. The U.S. felt like this was a big point of unity and that they're really doing enough to stop the turmoil that will plague the region for years to come, right? At both conferences, again, Latin America is going to present the United States with their economic turmoil, right? They're going to present them with trade agreements and financial aid. The United States says that this is it's a case of smallpox in Europe compared to the common cold in Latin America. They perceived European economic struggles to be far worse than what was going on in Latin America. And that was a big mistake by Truman. Truman broke FDR's idea that Latin America should be at the forefront of American foreign policy, right? That was the point of the good neighbor policy, that we need to work together as a hemisphere for security. And Truman kind of missed the ball on that a little bit. Truman is going to pair Latin America along with Asia and Africa as there's no imminent communist threat. They're not important because there's no direct threat. Right now, it's all about Europe, and that's where he's going to focus his policies, which, as we talked about in the SL part of the class, that's why Korea happens, that's why China happens, and the United States is kind of caught with their tail in between their legs because they did not perceive the idea that communism could spread outside of Europe at this point in time. All right. From 1949 to 1953, 20 Latin American republics received 79 million. It's called the Point Four program or the Point IV. It's written in Roman numerals program. That's not a lot of money, right? That's nothing compared to what was just sent overseas to Europe, right? You do not perceive the depths of our economic crisis, and that was a quote by Vargas, the Brazilian leader, to Harry Truman, right? So again, Truman does not understand the assignment when it comes to Latin American economics, and again, he's not making that connection that poor countries turn communist in Europe, so don't make them poor, but not realizing that Latin America is poorer than Europe and communist ideas are going to start to bubble up there. Here is a thesis statement for you. Truman's failure to recognize the financial crisis in the region and his choice to not extend a program like Marshall Aid set the region up for political and economic turmoil for years to come. All right. So that's this episode. Next one, I'm going to pick back up with that domestic situation in the United States, talk about McCarthyism, and do a little bit of a review there. Again, this is stuff that we didn't really talk about in class, but I'm hoping you guys have a firm enough kind of foundation for this to really kind of make sense and click for you guys. If not, drop a comment. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, hope it helped. Oh, what did I do?